There we go.
Here we go. Well, welcome, welcome. I am Jenny Means from Just Breathe with Means, and one of my BFFs are here. My friend Mary from the Manic Beader. I'm tripping over my words already. And we're here to talk to you tonight just about some subjects that are really near and dear to our hearts. So for me, the reason I wanted to put together a video series, which is the first in a series that I'm putting together, is to help people understand first and foremost when you're trying to heal from trauma or anything along those lines, or having a rough time in your life, that you're not alone. And so what I wanted to do is create these spaces where maybe we share with one another ways and systems that worked for us to help us get through. Because sometimes life can be a little rough, for sure. And so we're going to get started now. I'm going to turn this over to my beautiful friend, Mary, here. And I wonder, Mary, if you could tell everyone a little bit about yourself and the creative work that you do.
Sure, love to. Hi, I am Mary Valesano. I am an art teacher in Hillsborough County, Florida. I teach elementary art. I also am a mom of 2 grown kids. I am a wife, and I live here in Florida. And I have had a side business doing my art and so on. Oh, I want to say going on 15 years now or so on.
Wow.
I've always loved to have this little side gig going on, creative jewelry and beach themed things.
That's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. So you can tell from maybe Mary's introduction, the way that we're focusing tonight is art. Art in the creative world, how we can use that to help us find ways to calm ourselves and to heal ourselves. And I know a lot of artists, whether they be musicians or sculptors or painters, that's usually what they find is this great healing modality through it. But we don't always talk about that piece. And I love doing background on artists. Some of my favorite artists, Monet is my all-time favorite. You know, they've gone through a lot of things in their life when you start to study their lives. And then you realize that's when they made some of their best artwork, right? Is when they were going through those trials. And so definitely love art myself. Mary, have you ever, like, when you look back, did you always consider yourself this creative type personality?
Yes, ever since I was little, I found solace in that.
That's really, really, really neat. What kind of art did you like to do as a kiddo?
Well, I remember using my imagination quite a bit. Even if it was like digging in the dirt or making dirt pictures or whatever, I enjoyed that. I found a lot of freedom there, and I just liked making things.
Yeah, I've got to say, as a previous preschool teacher that always talked about allowing your kids to get dirty, I love that answer because that is sometimes it's more freedom there in the dirt rather than on an easel where there maybe feels like a little more pressure, right?
Yeah.
To perform.
Exactly.
And that is the first place that kiddos usually start, is there in the dirt. That's really, really neat. I've always loved art myself. I don't necessarily consider myself an artist until more recently. And I'm like, I can put that word on myself. But I've always loved creating in different avenues. I think for me, one of the first times, and we'll move into how this has helped us trauma-wise. For me, the first time it hit me that I was turning to art was back when my mom got really sick with cancer. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what made me do it, but I was living in Connecticut at the time, and I went down to the basement and I was feeling really frustrated, losing control of like being able to help her and all those things. And I brought out paint that actually was my children's paint. And I painted on the cement wall this huge dragon. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why the dragon. I don't know if the dragon represented the cancer or she needed to be the strength of the dragon. I still don't know, but it came out of nowhere. And I looked at that dragon for she was sick with cancer for 6 years, and it stayed there for a good amount of time because it wasn't, yeah, so it was there. And then after she passed away, I decided to take the dragon down, right? And that in itself was also very therapeutic. And we were getting the house ready to move, and I figured no one wanted a dragon in their basement. And I've done art for fun and stuff too, but that, thinking back when I was going to ask you these questions, that was the first time I felt my emotions coming out through the paint. And it was a really, I remember staying up till like midnight for a couple nights just working on that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I needed that. I needed that. So not necessarily going into the type of traumas that we've had. That's another show, right? For another day. But how did, when you did go through different times in your life where you've had trauma, how did it show up emotionally or mentally or physically in you personally?
Well, I can say that as an adult, as I have started looking back and unpacking different things from my childhood, I realized a common theme was, as a child, I wasn't really allowed to express negative emotions. I had a certain thing because it was too upsetting to my mom, and being a good girl that I was, I didn't want to upset her or my alcoholic father or anyone. So I stuffed things. I basically wasn't allowed to express anything. So I had found, going into my adult years, I had this major backlog. And I remember one of the first times I realized it, I was in my 30s in a counselor's office where I was saying, I feel like I'm failing because I'm not a level 10 excitement all the time. And she's like, Mary, like 4, 5, 6, that's the goal. The middle ground is the goal.
Yeah.
And that made me go, wow. So anyways, there was a huge backlog, and even giving myself permission to be able to express sadness and fear. I had a lot of fear growing up, a lot of insecurity, and there was no place for me to put those emotions. So I, giving myself permission, and it takes a while to get comfortable, feeling like you truly do have the permission. But as I started opening up, both with a counselor and then starting yoga, that's what I was thinking also as you were talking. Healing comes, you want like a menu, you want a bunch of different modalities. And this is definitely one way that has helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, talking about it, as much as, because I too was a stuffer, a former stuffer, when things were going on, whether some things through my childhood, but mostly mine went through, like I will say, my midlife time period. And yes, I was telling people, I had some really good friends that walked the walk through with me and family and such, but I still wasn't really releasing, right, the amount of things, because maybe I didn't know how to show anger, or I didn't want to be sad all the time, so I had to pretend to be happy. And I remember being a classroom teacher, and I loved going to work because I pretended everything was fine. I became a really good actress that way, because you had to. You couldn't bring that into a classroom, obviously. And then, things would start sneaking up. So for me, like, I would start getting stomach aches, or I would get a headache, or that's when I believe I started my autoimmune issues, was way back then. I just didn't connect it all. I didn't connect all the dots there. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, when you were talking to, when you were a child, I mean, a lot of us have been children and the extras, and I'm being sarcastic here, like music, art, all these creative places that sometimes even get cut in certain school districts. That is where children can work out things, right, through the arts, where they're not necessarily able to do it as they're sitting and doing math in the classroom. So
Absolutely. That actually has been a really neat thing For me, I was a classroom teacher for 30 plus years up until this is my second year teaching elementary art. And boy, I've found my sweet spot for that very reason. This
Yeah.
is a safe place. My main like rules or structure in my class is that it's a place of peace. That
Love it.
it is, we do what I call cool color voices. We're not shouting or acting rowdy. It's a place where we feel safe,
Yeah.
where we can um, uh, express ourselves, because some kids are, self-conscious about the product.
Right.
It's supposed to be a safe space where they can be. And boy, I have found that that creates inroads
Yes.
into what I consider the most essential thing is a child getting their feeling safe and getting their footing in life, being safe with who they are. Yeah, this has been amazing.
Yeah. And you mentioned the product. And again, as a former teacher, I can't help but pull it in. I was always so into like process versus product. And a lot of times, and I might get flack still all these years later, I had so many parents that were like, they love the product, the cutesy little thing to put on the fridge. And there's a time and a place for that. I always felt like,
Mhm.
occasionally, but it was the process part is to me where they learned the most. But now as I look through the lens of the psychology part of it, right? Even more so now looking back,
Yeah.
that just, and there were kids that came in that weren't playing in the dirt, weren't getting their hands dirty, all those things. So like we're just taking care of sensory needs and then fine motor needs. And then, oh wow, yeah, then they can also maybe pound into the Play-Doh or to make different things in the sculpture or whatever that to create. And it didn't have to look like anything at the end of the day. And some of them, I don't know if you have this happen because they're a little older. Mine were preschool, basically. Some of them didn't even want the product at the end. It really was just about the playing in the art, which
Absolutely. No,
I,
100%. It's the process that is valuable. And also, but when they feel pride in their product,
yes,
that is also very valuable.
yes,
You get them comfortable with themselves
yep.
where they are comfortable with what they produce.
Yeah. And I
But
think it's good to talk about this now too, because, again, we all kind of came from that world and then we became adults and maybe we're a little more critical of ourselves in the art realm, so to speak, like,
yeah,
and it's okay to play with it. It doesn't have to be necessarily. And if you do want something like that, create a project or choose a project that is more product related, right?
exactly.
I know you and I have talked about coloring, right? Coloring in certain shapes or mandalas. There's people that like to do that and it's nice and calming. And maybe that feels better as an art project for the evening.
Mhm.
So yeah, I love that idea. So do you feel like, I know you mentioned yoga and maybe there was different modalities that you found besides your art, right? That helped bring your regulation back into your body. What kind of things do you do like currently, if you don't mind sharing, to help yourself bring in the calm?
Well, stillness is so valuable, and you can find that in so many ways. So, like many of us, one of the way we try to outrun in ourselves those uncomfortable feelings,
Mhm.
always on the go. I'm famous multitasker for having 7 projects at the same time going. And
Yeah.
thankfully things are changing. Yoga, and you were a big part of that in uh, creating a safe space where you can just be. Oh my goodness. You are so good at what you do. And I remember really being able to just feel safe being still
Yeah.
and processing things. So it started there. And I have found that art has helped me in this way. This is kind of what I want to get at in this is whatever works for you.
Hmm.
is the place where you can shift yourself into neutral, into your mind into neutral, where kind of the background patterns are still going. The programs are still going in the background. Sometimes, like either during yoga or sometimes creating things, I have been able to kind of work out the answers to things I've been looking for
Yeah.
as I am pleasantly neutral. I like that term, pleasantly
Hmm.
neutral. And so one thing, some people might think, oh, I'm not artistic. What can I do?
Yeah.
Mm, patterns. That has science has proven that any kind of repetitive pattern can definitely help ease. So, I have recently found in the evenings, there's something called Zentangles. If you don't know what it is, Google it. Those are really fun patterns. There's a gazillion of them you can do. And I have a journal sketchbook. Also, I have recently found henna art, like um, they use on the henna patterns. But some of the patterns, it's just mindless
Mhm.
patterns of loops and then dots. And doing that repetitively, I know yesterday I had a real rough day at school. Kids are feeling the end of the year. Um, and so after I came home and crashed, I still, my nervous system was still like this. So as I'm listening to my show, I am just starting these patterns, and boy, I could feel it bring me right down. So it's the process. It is your brain being in neutral. Um, if you're excited about creating a product, and I have been there too, where I do have a business. I make um, beach related items. Yes, Jenny's bracelets. See, I
Love
do a lot of sea glass
it.
stuff. Um, so on. And so there have been phases where I am product oriented, and that's very relaxing at the time. But I recognize right now, um, at this moment, especially with the school year coming to the end, I don't need the pressure of feeling like I have to create products. So the process has been very valuable. Sometimes coloring, getting yourself a set of the alcohol markers, and just doing a doodle, a scribble doodle, and then coloring in different
Ah,
sections.
yes.
It cracks me up. My students like to say, it's so satisfying. That's
Oh,
they say that all the time now. It's so satisfying. So, but yeah, I understand. And that helps me relax for the evening.
yeah. I'm glad we brought the idea of children into this as well, because I think for a lot of people, and I'm noticing it out in the field, even in yoga, like we're talking a lot about our inner child, right?
Yep.
And so for those of us who have worked with children, I think that's sometimes why we enjoy it so much, because it reminds us to stay connected to that inner child. And what maybe we liked back then, like you and I both liked creative arts, for people listening or watching, maybe they've wandered away from that for a little while, or they did the adult thing and then they're like, that's for kids. It's really not. There's a lot of adults that do this and don't necessarily, again, like I was saying, call themselves an artist, but you really are, because you're creating. But when you were saying the doodling, I remember my severe ADD brain. It was the 70s, so we didn't know that's what it was. I always had to be doing something when I was in school. When they were talking I had a very hard time focusing. So I either would look out the window, which was a beautiful scene there in Connecticut, or I would be doodling. And I heard better by
Mhm.
doodling. Now they know is very, very helpful. Back then, not as much. And I did get spoken to quite a few times.
Mhm.
But just noticing and thinking back, whether it's art or anything, what did you like to do as a kid? What brought you peace? What
Mhm.
brought you calm? Did you go outside and play in the garden? Like, find those things again and bring them back into your life, even if it's a little bit, or bring them back in if you have young kids and do it with your young children, if you haven't already. Um, so yeah, yeah. Well, Mary, is there anything else you want to share with people while we have their attention on just, trauma in general? Like, what would you like to tell if someone's going through a hard time now? What would you want to share with them?
First of all, you're not alone. There are people who do understand,
Mhm.
um, and finding safe people and safe places to be.
Yeah.
Um, I have found that for me, what has brought me a lot of peace is finding, especially those of us who are people pleasers, finding what pleases us and what feels good to us. First of all, recognizing some of us don't even know what we want or what we like.
Yeah.
When we figure that out, going for it. I know for me, it has been a way that I feel God's pleasure, um, by finding things that actually I love. I just feel so cared for when I'm in the midst of doing that.
Mhm.
So find what brings you peace and joy. Go for the stillness. Learn to be still. What will help you? So for me, it's been the yoga. It's also been the um, creating and making things. Find things that give you a moment's rest, a moment's peace. And it is something, it's a practice. So don't
Mhm.
expect to be perfect at it right away. But it you build it up and it becomes a safe space for you. So that's
I love that.
what I wish for other people.
Yeah, I would say totally the same. I think for me, when I was going through things, again, there was people walking the walk with me, which I'm very appreciative of, but finding other people in communities that have gone through very
Yeah.
similar stories as mine was a godsend. And most of the time it was online is where I found
Mhm.
that. That's why, for those of you who follow me on Facebook, I'm on there a lot because that's where a lot of my groups are.
Yeah.
And if I did not have people like that, that would have been a totally different outcome for me, I think.
Mhm.
And then for a long time in my life, I didn't think I was worthy enough, I'll be honest with you, to spend the money to go to do yoga
Mhm.
or to work out, the time away from my children. I remember people in my community being like, oh, you can't leave your children. Not that they even were speaking to me, but just in general, um, because they need you home every moment of the day. And I kind of had that in my head as that was the ideal of how the mom needed to be. And I needed to break that mold fast and
Mhm.
furious to help myself heal because I
Absolutely.
needed time with my girlfriends. I needed time exercising. I needed time, to go take a walk, maybe just with the dog, whatever it may be, being in nature, all those things, and giving myself credit for doing that to take care of myself. Because if we're not taken care of, especially those of us who are, I know
Mhm.
both you and I are caregivers for different people in our lives, then it all falls apart, and
Absolutely.
it's just not.
No, it's not selfish. I would before thought it selfish. It's necessary. It is actually a good thing. That's where I have felt God's love the strongest. That has been as I've gotten to know myself,
Yeah.
God's presence is in there. And as I do things to honor myself, that sounded before growing up in a kind of a strict Christian community, you would never say things like that, like honoring yourself, clutch your
Right.
pearls if
Right.
you say that. But yeah, that's actually where I have found God's presence. It's been amazing.
I
As
love
I
it.
tend to myself, and the healthier I get, the stronger my connection is with God and with other people.
100%. I used to say I'll never judge. And now I've lived so many things. I really know I would never judge anyone for anything they've gone through.
Mhm.
And I do feel like my story, is horrific as it was for me, it has helped me be a better human. I totally believe that it was meant to be the way it is. So I think for people going through a hard time, they might not feel that right away, but in retrospect, sometimes that comes in no matter what we've gone through.
Mhm.
And,
I
life
agree.
can be really ugly. And I'm grateful for people like you, Mary, in my community and how we've met each other
Mhm.
through our church connection, and community. And I thank you for sticking by me through thick and thin. And I
Oh, ditto,
appreciate
girl.
you jumping on here and
Okay,
sharing a
anytime.
little of yourself. So just a reminder, people, that you don't need to be the biggest, best artist in the whole wide world. Just finding an outlet for yourself in that way, if that's always been kind of a draw for you. And if not, we're going to have other guests on here with different things to open up different ways to heal. So thanks again, Mare. I
You're
look
welcome.
forward to seeing you all again very soon.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks.